I didn't get an invitation to my sister's wedding, so I went on a trip. Sorry, dear, this event is only for the people we actually love, my mother said. Dad added, some people just don't belong at family celebrations. Sister agreed, finally a wedding without the family disappointment. Aunt added, real family only means real family. When the wedding was cancelled because of a debt, the whole family started begging me, but it was too late. My name is Madison, and I'm 30 years old now. This is about my sister Brooke's wedding that never happened 2 years ago, and how years of being treated like the family scapegoat finally caught up with everyone involved. Let me start from the beginning so you understand the full picture. Growing up, I was always the odd one out in my family. My parents, Scott and Linda, made it crystal clear that Brooke was their golden child. She was 2 years younger than me, blonde and bubbly, everything they wanted in a daughter. I, on the other hand, was the quiet, bookish one who preferred reading to socializing and chose a practical career in accounting over something more exciting. The favoritism wasn't subtle. When Brooke wanted dance lessons, they paid for the most expensive studio in town. When I asked for art supplies, I was told we needed to be more careful with money. Brooke got a brand new car for her 16th birthday. I got a job at the local grocery store to save up for a used Honda. Every family photo seemed strategically arranged with Brooke front and center, while I was relegated to the edges or sometimes cropped out entirely for their Christmas cards. But the real kicker was always my Aunt Kelly, my mom's sister. She lived about an hour away and visited frequently, always making a point to shower Brooke with gifts and attention while treating me like I was invisible. "Oh Brooke, you're just glowing today," she'd gush, then turn to me with a forced smile and a half-hearted "Hi, Madison." Despite all this, I worked hard to maintain relationships with my family. I called regularly, remembered birthdays, showed up to every family gathering with a smile plastered on my face. I told myself that maybe if I just tried harder, was more successful, more likable, things would change. And honestly, I did become successful. After college, I landed a great job at a prestigious accounting firm. I worked my way up, earned my CPA, and by age 26, I was making more money than anyone else in my family. I bought a beautiful townhouse, traveled regularly, and had built a life I was genuinely proud of. Brooke, meanwhile, had bounced between part-time jobs and community college classes, never quite settling on anything. She was charming and social, sure, but she lived in a studio apartment that my parents helped pay for and drove the same car they bought her in high school, now held together with prayers and duct tape. None of this changed the family dynamic. If anything, my success seemed to make them resent me more. At family dinners, they'd make little comments about how I was too busy for family or thought I was better than everyone. When I'd offer to help with expenses for family events or emergencies, they'd act like I was showing off. Then, in the spring of 2022, Brooke got engaged to her boyfriend Hunter. Hunter was a nice enough guy, worked in construction, and clearly adored Brooke. I was genuinely happy for them, despite everything. Love is love, right? The engagement announcement came via a family group text that somehow I wasn't included in. I found out when Brooke posted it on Facebook. I immediately called to congratulate her, and she seemed genuinely pleased to hear from me. We talked for almost an hour about wedding plans, and she mentioned they were thinking of having it in October 2022. I'd love to help with planning, I offered. I know some great vendors, and I'd be happy to contribute financially. "Oh, that's so sweet of you," Brooke said. "I'll definitely let you know." But weeks passed, and I heard nothing about wedding plans. When I'd bring it up during our occasional phone calls, Brooke would change the subject or give vague answers. I started to feel like something was off, but I pushed those feelings aside. Maybe they were just taking their time with planning. Summer came and went. I heard through casual family conversations that the wedding was definitely happening in October, but still no specific details were shared with me. No date, no venue, no mention of dress shopping or bridal showers. I figured maybe they were having a small, intimate ceremony and just hadn't gotten around to telling everyone the details yet. Then, in early September, I was scrolling through Facebook when I saw a post from my cousin Michelle, Aunt Kelly's daughter. It was a photo of her holding a beautiful cream-colored invitation with elegant script writing. The caption read, "So excited for Brooke and Hunter's wedding next month. Can't wait to celebrate with the family." My stomach dropped. I screenshotted the post and stared at it for a long time. The invitation was clearly expensive, with embossed lettering and what looked like gold foil details. This wasn't some last-minute, intimate affair. This was a proper wedding with proper invitations that had been sent out weeks ago. I immediately called Brooke. "Hey Brooke, it's Madison. I saw Michelle's post about your wedding invitation. I think mine might have gotten lost in the mail." There was a long pause. "Oh, Madison. I was going to call you about that." "Call me about what?" "Well, we're having a really small wedding. Like, super intimate. Just immediate family and our closest friends." I'm immediate family, Brooke. I'm your sister. Another pause. I know, but it's complicated. Hunter's family is huge, and we had to make some really tough decisions about the guest list. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. So you're saying I'm not invited to your wedding? It's not personal, Madison. We just couldn't invite everyone we wanted to. But even as she said it, I could hear the falseness in her voice. This was absolutely personal. I spent the next few days in a haze of hurt and confusion. I kept replaying conversations, trying to figure out what I'd done wrong. Had I offended someone? Been too pushy about helping? I couldn't make sense of it. Finally, I decided to call my parents. Maybe they could help mediate or at least explain what was happening. Hi Mom, it's Madison. I need to talk to you about Brooke's wedding. Oh honey, what about it? I didn't get an invitation. Brooke says it's because they're keeping it small, but I saw that Michelle got one and she's not immediate family. There was a pause, and then my mother's voice turned cold. Madison, I think you need to understand something. This wedding is for the people Brooke and Hunter actually love and want to celebrate with. I was stunned. What is that supposed to mean? It means that some people earn their place at family celebrations, and others don't. Brooke has every right to invite the people who matter to her. I'm her sister. Being related to someone doesn't automatically make you important to them, dear. This event is only for the people we actually love. I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. Mom, how can you say that to me? I'm just being honest. You've always been so focused on your career and your own life. You can't expect to be prioritized when you've never prioritized this family. Before I could respond, I heard my father's voice in the background. He must have taken the phone because suddenly he was talking. Madison, your mother's right. Some people just don't belong at family celebrations. You've made your choices about what matters to you, and now Brooke's making hers. I was crying at this point. Dad, I've never done anything to hurt Brooke or anyone in this family. I've always been there for you guys. Being there and being wanted are two different things, Madison. Maybe it's time you accepted that. They hung up on me. I sat in my kitchen, sobbing, trying to process what had just happened. My own parents had essentially told me I wasn't loved or wanted by my family. All those years of trying to prove myself, of being successful, of showing up and being supportive, meant nothing to them. But the worst was yet to come. A few days later, I ran into my Aunt Kelly at the grocery store. I was still raw from the conversation with my parents, but I thought maybe she might be more understanding. Hi Aunt Kelly, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked uncomfortable. Oh, hi Madison. I guess you heard about Brooke's wedding situation. She sighed. Look, Madison, I don't want to get in the middle of family drama, but I think you should know that real family only means real family. Brooke wants to be surrounded by people who've been there for her, who she has close relationships with. I've been there for her. I'm her sister. Are you, though? Really? When's the last time you called her just to chat, not because you wanted something or to show off about your job? When's the last time you made an effort to be part of this family instead of just around it? I stared at her. I call all the time. I show up to every family event. I've offered to help pay for things. Money isn't everything, Madison. Brooke needs emotional support, not financial support. She needs family who care about her as a person, not people who think they can buy their way into her good graces. I left that conversation feeling even more confused and hurt. Was I really as absent and cold as they were making me sound? I went home and looked through my phone. I had called Brooke just 2 weeks earlier to ask how wedding planning was going. I'd texted her funny memes regularly. I'd been to every family barbecue, birthday party, and holiday gathering for the past 5 years. But maybe that wasn't enough for them. Maybe I really was the problem. I decided to try one more time. I called Brooke directly. Brooke, can we please talk about this? I feel like there's been some kind of misunderstanding. Madison, there's no misunderstanding. I've thought about this a lot, and honestly, I'm kind of relieved you won't be there. What do you mean? I mean that finally, I can have a wedding without the family disappointment hovering around. You always make everything about you, Madison. Every family event becomes about your job or your house or your travels. I just want one day that's about me and Hunter, without having to worry about you making everyone uncomfortable. I make people uncomfortable? You don't even realize it, do you? You walk into family gatherings like you're better than all of us. You talk about your fancy job and your expensive trips, and then you act confused when people don't want to hear it. This wedding is supposed to be the happiest day of my life, and I don't want it ruined by your presence. She hung up. I sat there, phone in hand, feeling completely shattered. According to my family, I was selfish, cold, absent, show-offy, and generally just an unpleasant person to be around. Maybe they were right. Maybe I really was the problem. But then something shifted in me. I started thinking about all the times I'd bitten my tongue when they made little digs at me. All the times I'd smiled and nodded when they dismissed my achievements or make fun of my interests. All the times I'd offered help and been made to feel like I was being condescending. I thought about how Brooke had never once asked me about my life in any meaningful way. How my parents had never visited my house, despite me visiting theirs regularly. How Aunt Kelly had never remembered my birthday but never forgot Brooke's. And I realized something: I hadn't been the problem. I'd been the scapegoat. They'd spent years making me feel like I was never good enough, never caring enough, never family enough. And I'd internalized it so deeply that I was ready to believe that being excluded from my own sister's wedding was somehow my fault. But it wasn't. So I made a decision. If they didn't want me at the wedding, fine. I wouldn't be there. But I also wouldn't be available for anything else they might need from me. I booked a trip to Italy for the week of Brooke's wedding. I'd always wanted to see Tuscany, and I figured this was the perfect time. I didn't tell anyone in my family about the trip. I just quietly made my plans and looked forward to spending a week in a beautiful place, far away from people who clearly didn't value me. The week before my trip, I started getting some interesting information through the grapevine. My friend Jessica, who worked at the same bank as Hunter, mentioned that there had been some talk about financial difficulties with the wedding. "I probably shouldn't tell you this," she said over coffee, but Hunter mentioned to his co-worker that they're struggling to pay for everything. Apparently the venue required a final payment that they can't cover, and both families are strapped for cash. I felt a little twist of something in my stomach. Not quite satisfaction, but interest. "That's too bad," I said neutrally. "Yeah, I guess Brooke's been pretty stressed about it. Hunter's been working overtime, but it's not enough. I heard they might have to cancel if they can't come up with the money soon." I filed this information away and continued with my plans. 2 days before I was supposed to leave for Italy, my phone started ringing. It was my mother. "Madison, honey, I need to talk to you about something important." The sudden sweetness in her voice was jarring after our last conversation. "What's that, Mom?" "Well, it's about Brooke's wedding. They're having some financial difficulties, and I was wondering if you might be willing to help out. You know, as a family member." I paused. I thought I wasn't really family, Mom. At least, not the kind that gets invited to weddings. "Oh, honey, you know we didn't mean it like that. We were just trying to respect Brooke's wishes for a small ceremony." "Her small ceremony that includes Michelle and apparently half the town, but not her own sister?" "Madison, please. Brooke is really struggling right now. The venue is threatening to cancel everything if they don't pay the remaining balance by tomorrow. It's $15,000. I know that's significant, but it would mean the world to Brooke." I almost laughed. $15,000 was significant, even for me. It was more than some people made in several months. But the audacity of calling me up to ask for that kind of money after telling me I wasn't loved or wanted was breathtaking. "Have you asked Michelle? Or Aunt Kelly? Or any of the other real family members who are invited?" "Madison, please don't be petty about this. Brooke needs help." "I'm not being petty, Mom. I'm just wondering why the family disappointment who doesn't belong at family celebrations is suddenly the first person you call when you need money." "Fine, if you're going to be like this, I'll call your father." She hung up. 20 minutes later, my phone rang again. It was my dad. "Madison, your mother told me about your conversation. I think you're misunderstanding the situation." "What am I misunderstanding, Dad?" "Look, I know things got a little heated when we talked about the wedding before. But this is about helping your sister in a time of need. Some people just don't belong at family celebrations, but that doesn't mean you can't help family when they're struggling. So I don't belong at celebrations, but I do belong when you need money?" "Madison, don't twist my words. We're asking because we know you care about Brooke, regardless of whatever issues you two might have. If Brooke cared about me, she would have invited me to her wedding. If you cared about me, you wouldn't have told me I wasn't loved by this family. So no, Dad, I'm not going to help pay for a wedding I'm not invited to." "You're really going to let your sister's wedding be ruined over a petty grudge?" "I'm not ruining anything. I'm just not fixing problems that aren't mine to fix." He hung up too. An hour later, Brooke called. "Madison, please. I know we haven't been getting along lately, but I really need your help." For a moment, hearing the tears in her voice, I almost caved. Despite everything, she was still my little sister. "Brooke, I would have helped you with anything if you just treated me like family. But you made it very clear that I'm not welcome in your life." "I never said you weren't welcome in my life. You said you were relieved I wouldn't be at your wedding because I'm the family disappointment who makes everyone uncomfortable." I was upset when I said that. I didn't mean it. "Which part didn't you mean? The part where you called me a disappointment, or the part where you said I make everyone uncomfortable?" "Madison, please. I'm begging you. If we can't pay this, we'll lose everything. The deposits, the venue, everything. Please don't let my wedding be ruined because of a fight. Brooke, you ruined your own wedding when you decided to exclude me. You chose to make me feel unwanted and unloved, and now you're facing the consequences of your choices. But you have the money. You could fix this so easily? I could. But I won't. I hope you figure something out, Brooke. I really do. But it won't be with my help. I hung up and immediately turned off my phone. I had a flight to catch. Italy was everything I'd hoped it would be. I spent a week wandering through vineyards, touring ancient cities, eating incredible food, and sleeping in a beautiful villa in the Tuscan countryside. I posted photos on social media of my adventures, making sure they were public so anyone who looked could see exactly where I was and how much I was enjoying myself. On what would have been Brooke's wedding day, I was touring the Uffizi Gallery in Florence. I took a selfie in front of Botticelli's Birth of Venus with a huge smile on my face. The caption read, "Sometimes the best celebrations are the ones where you're surrounded by beauty instead of negativity." Hashtag living my best life, hashtag solo travel, hashtag no regrets. When I turned my phone back on after returning home, I had 47 missed calls and 129 text messages. The wedding had been cancelled. Apparently, none of the other real family members had been able to come up with the money. Aunt Kelly had claimed she was between paychecks, Michelle was saving for her own house, and various other relatives had offered thoughts and prayers but no actual financial assistance. The venue had cancelled everything when they didn't receive payment. The catering was cancelled, the flowers were cancelled, the photographer demanded payment for the engagement photos before releasing them. Brooke and Hunter had lost all of their deposits and were now in debt for thousands of dollars with nothing to show for it. The messages started apologetic and quickly turned angry. From Mom, "Madison, please call me. We need to talk about this wedding situation. Brooke is devastated." From Dad, "I can't believe you would let your sister's wedding be cancelled over money. Call me back." From Brooke, "Madison, the wedding is cancelled. I hope you're happy. You got what you wanted." From Aunt Kelly, "I heard about what you did to Brooke. This is a new low, even for you." And then, as the messages continued, the tone shifted again. From Mom, "Madison, honey, I know we said some things we didn't mean. Can we please talk about maybe rescheduling the wedding? We could all chip in this time." From Dad, "Madison, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Of course, your family. We were just stressed about the wedding planning. Can you please call us?" From Brooke, "Madison, I'm sorry about what I said before. I was just overwhelmed with wedding planning. Could we please talk about doing a smaller ceremony that you could help with?" From Aunt Kelly, "Madison, I think we all got a little carried away with the wedding drama. Real family means working through problems together. Can you please call Brooke?" But the most telling message came from Michelle. "Hey Madison, I heard about Brooke's wedding getting cancelled. That's really too bad. By the way, I don't suppose you'd be willing to help me with a down payment on my house? Family helping family, right? Let me know." I almost threw my phone across the room. They'd learned nothing. Even after everything that had happened, they still saw me as nothing more than a bank account with a family obligation attached. They weren't sorry for how they'd treated me, they were sorry that their treatment had financial consequences. What really got to me was the sheer audacity of it all. Here I was, the person they'd spent months telling wasn't really family, wasn't loved, wasn't wanted at their precious celebration. The person they called a disappointment who made everyone uncomfortable. And yet, the moment they needed money, suddenly I was family again. Suddenly I mattered. I started thinking about all the other times this pattern had played out over the years. When my dad's car had broken down 3 years ago, guess who got the call? When Brooke needed help with her security deposit for her apartment, who did they suggest she ask? When Aunt Kelly's roof started leaking and she needed emergency repairs, somehow my name came up as someone who might be willing to help family. But when it came to the good times, the celebrations, the moments that actually mattered, I was conveniently forgotten. I wasn't invited to my parents' anniversary party because it was just a small thing. I found out about my cousin's graduation party through social media. When Aunt Kelly threw her big birthday bash last year, somehow my invitation got lost in the mail. The pattern was crystal clear. I was useful when they needed something, invisible when they didn't. I remembered a conversation I'd had with my therapist a few months earlier. Dr. Johnson had been helping me work through some of my family issues, and she'd said something that stuck with me. "Madison, healthy relationships are built on mutual respect and genuine affection. If someone only values you for what you can provide for them, that's not a relationship, that's a transaction." At the time, I'd pushed back against that assessment. "But they're my family," I'd argued. "Family is supposed to be there for each other, right? Family is supposed to love and support each other unconditionally," she'd replied. But it sounds like their support for you comes with a lot of conditions, while their expectations of your support come with none. Looking at my phone full of messages now, her words rang truer than ever. Where was their unconditional support when I needed it? Where was their love when I was hurting from being excluded? Where was their understanding when I tried to explain how their treatment made me feel? It was nowhere to be found. Because their love had always been conditional on my compliance, my usefulness, my willingness to accept whatever scraps of attention they were willing to give me. I started scrolling through the messages more carefully, analyzing the language they used. Even in their attempts to reconcile, they were still manipulating me. My mother's messages were full of guilt trips. Brooke is devastated. How could you let this happen? Your sister needs you. My father's messages were accusatory. I can't believe you would do this. This is a new low. You're being selfish. Not a single one of them had actually apologized for what they'd said to me. Not one had acknowledged that telling me I wasn't loved or wanted was cruel and wrong. They were all focused on the consequences of their actions, not the actions themselves. Brooke's messages were perhaps the most telling. Even in her desperation, she couldn't bring herself to take responsibility for her choices. I hope you're happy, she'd written. You got what you wanted. As if I had somehow orchestrated this entire situation instead of simply refusing to fix the mess she'd created. What I'd wanted was to be treated like a valued member of my family. What I'd wanted was to be invited to my sister's wedding. What I'd wanted was for the people who raised me to love me unconditionally, the way parents are supposed to love their children. But apparently, what I'd actually wanted, according to Brooke, was for her wedding to be cancelled. Because in their minds, my refusal to enable their behavior was the same as actively sabotaging them. I thought about the psychology behind their reaction. They created a narrative where I was the villain, the selfish sister who had ruined everything out of spite. It was easier for them to paint me as the bad guy than to examine their own behavior and admit they'd been wrong. This wasn't about the money, not really. $8,000 was painful for them, but it wasn't impossible to come up with if they'd really tried. They could have asked Hunter's family for help. They could have scaled back the wedding even further. They could have postponed it and saved up more money. But instead, they'd immediately turned to me, because they'd gotten used to the idea that I would always be there to solve their problems. They'd taken my generosity for granted for so long that they genuinely couldn't understand why I would suddenly stop providing it. The entitlement was staggering. They'd spent months making it clear that I wasn't welcome in their lives, and then they'd expected me to hand over thousands of dollars to make their lives better. They'd told me I didn't belong at family celebrations, and then they'd been shocked when I didn't want to pay for one. I realized that this moment was a turning point, not just for Brooke's wedding, but for my entire relationship with my family. For years, I'd been trapped in a cycle of trying to earn their love and acceptance. I'd succeeded professionally, I'd been generous with my time and money, I'd shown up for every event and tried to be the perfect daughter and sister. But nothing I did was ever enough, because the problem wasn't with my behavior, it was with their values. They didn't value me as a person. They valued me as a resource. And now that I'd stopped being a resource they could count on, they were panicking. All their attempts to reach out, all their messages trying to guilt me into helping, were just different versions of the same manipulation they'd always used. I decided to respond to each of them, but only once. To my mother, "Hi Mom. I got your messages. I want to be clear about something. When you told me that this wedding was only for people you actually love, I believed you. When you said I wasn't really family, I accepted that. I'm not interested in pretending those conversations didn't happen just because you need money now. I hope Brooke and Hunter can figure out their financial situation, but it won't be with my help. To my father, Dad, there's no misunderstanding. You told me that some people don't belong at family celebrations, and that being related doesn't make someone important. I agree. I don't belong at your celebrations, and apparently I'm not important to you. But that also means your problems aren't important to me. I hope you understand. To Brooke, I'm sorry your wedding was cancelled, but I'm not sorry for my decision. You told me that you were relieved I wouldn't be there because I'm the family disappointment. You said you didn't want me ruining your special day with my presence. Well, now you don't have to worry about me ruining anything ever again. I won't be at your wedding, your future children's birthdays, your anniversary parties, or any other family events. You got what you wanted. To Aunt Kelly, you're right that real family means real family. Thank you for teaching me that I was never considered real family by any of you. It's been very educational. And to Michelle, hi Michelle. Thanks for reaching out. Unfortunately, I only help real family with financial matters, and I've recently learned that I don't qualify as real family. Best of luck with your house hunting. After sending those messages, I changed my phone number and blocked all of their social media accounts. I also set my own social media to private and removed anyone who might serve as a conduit for information back to them. I was done. But the story doesn't end there. Over the next few months, I heard through mutual friends and acquaintances what had happened to everyone. Brooke and Hunter had tried to plan a smaller, cheaper wedding, but they were so far in debt from the cancelled wedding that they couldn't afford even a modest ceremony. Hunter had to take a second job to pay off their debts, and Brooke had to move back in with our parents because she couldn't afford her studio apartment anymore. My parents, who had always lived paycheck to paycheck despite putting on airs of middle-class stability, were struggling with the additional expense of supporting Brooke again. My dad had to postpone his retirement, and my mom had to take on extra shifts at her part-time job. Aunt Kelly had been counting on Brooke's wedding as a major social event where she could show off and network. With it cancelled, she'd lost face in her social circle and had apparently become something of a laughingstock among her friends. Meanwhile, Michelle had indeed been unable to afford the house she wanted and had to settle for a much smaller place in a less desirable area. But the real kicker came about 6 months later. I was at a work conference in the city when I ran into Tom, an old family friend who had known us all since we were kids. He recognized me and came over to say hello. "Madison. I haven't seen you in ages. How are you doing?" "I'm doing really well, Tom. How are you?" "Good, good. Hey, I heard about all the drama with Brooke's wedding. That was really unfortunate." "Yeah, it was a difficult situation." Tom looked around and then leaned in closer. "Can I tell you something? I never said this to your parents, but I was really surprised when I heard you weren't invited to the wedding." "Oh? Yeah, I mean, I've known your family for 20 years, and you've always been the responsible one. The one who had her life together. Brooke's sweet, but she's always been a bit flighty. And your parents have always seemed to take you for granted." "That's interesting to hear. I actually heard that the original plan was for Brooke to have a smaller wedding party, but then your mom and Aunt Kelly got involved in the planning and convinced her to expand everything, except when it came to including you. They apparently said something about wanting Brooke to have her moment without any distractions." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "Well, you know how proud your parents are of Brooke, but let's be honest, she's never really accomplished much. Meanwhile, you've got this great career, your own house, you travel all over the world. I think they were worried that having you in the wedding party would make Brooke look bad by comparison. So they convinced her not to invite me at all?" "That's what I heard. Your mom apparently said it would be better for Brooke's self-esteem if the wedding was just about her and not about comparing her to her successful sister." I felt a mix of vindication and sadness. I'd been right that this was about more than guest list limitations. My own family had deliberately excluded me because my success made them uncomfortable. "Tom, can I ask you something? Do you think I'm cold or difficult to be around?" He looked genuinely surprised. "Are you kidding? You're one of the warmest people I know. You always remember to ask about people's kids, you're generous with your time and resources, and you're incredibly loyal to people you care about. Why would you ask that?" "Just something someone said to me once." "Well, whoever said that doesn't know you very well." That conversation confirmed what I'd started to suspect. My family's treatment of me had never been about my behavior. It had been about their own insecurities and jealousies. A year later, I heard that Brooke and Hunter had finally managed to have a small courthouse wedding with just their parents present. No reception, no party, just a quick ceremony followed by dinner at a chain restaurant. Around the same time, I got engaged to my boyfriend David, whom I'd been dating for 3 years. David was a lawyer, kind and funny and completely supportive of my decision to cut contact with my family. When he proposed, I called my best friend from college, my mentor from work, and my cousin from my dad's side of the family, who had never been close to my parents anyway. We planned a beautiful destination wedding in Costa Rica with 30 of our closest friends and chosen family members. It was everything I'd ever dreamed of, intimate, meaningful, and surrounded by people who genuinely loved and supported us. Since I'd cut all contact with my biological family, I only shared photos in our private group chat and on my private social media accounts that they couldn't access. But word travels fast in small communities, and I knew eventually they'd hear about it through mutual acquaintances. Sure enough, about a week after we returned from our honeymoon, I started hearing through Tom and other mutual acquaintances that my biological family had found out about the wedding and were upset about not being invited or even informed. Tom told me they'd been asking around for my new contact information, trying to get people to pass along messages. But I'd been careful to only share my new number with people I truly trusted, and I'd asked them specifically not to share it with my family. The messages never reached me directly, but the sentiment was clear. They were hurt and angry that I'd gotten married without including them. The irony was completely lost on them. I'd learned that authentic family isn't about blood relations, it's about people who love you, support you, and treat you with respect. My wedding was full of authentic family, just not the people who shared my DNA. 2 years later, I'm happier than I've ever been. David and I bought a bigger house with a beautiful garden where we host dinner parties for our friends. I got another promotion at work and now oversee a team of 12 people. We travel regularly and are planning to start trying for kids next year. I occasionally hear updates about my biological family through mutual acquaintances. Brooke and Hunter are still struggling financially and living with my parents. Brooke never went back to school and is working part-time at a retail store. My parents are still working past retirement age and have apparently become quite bitter about their financial situation. Aunt Kelly's social standing never recovered from the wedding debacle, and she's become something of a cautionary tale in her social circle about the importance of maintaining family relationships. Sometimes I feel a pang of sadness about how things turned out. There are moments when I miss the idea of having a close family, of having sisters and parents and aunts who love and support each other. But then I remember how they made me feel for so many years. I remember being told I wasn't loved, that I didn't belong, that I was a disappointment. I remember being excluded from the most important day of my sister's life because my presence was considered a negative. And I remember that I tried for years to earn their love and acceptance, and it was never enough. The only thing that ever mattered to them about me was my ability to solve their problems with my money. I've built a new family now, made up of people who chose to love me and whom I chose to love in return. David's family welcomed me with open arms from the beginning. My friends celebrate my successes instead of resenting them. My coworkers respect my abilities instead of feeling threatened by them. I learned that you can't force people to value you, and you shouldn't have to. Real love and real family don't come with conditions and requirements. They don't disappear when you set boundaries or expect to be treated with basic respect. My biological family chose to exclude me when they thought they didn't need me, and then expected me to come running when they realized they did. But by then, it was too late. I'd learned my worth, and I'd found people who recognized it from the beginning. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting back at people who hurt you. Sometimes it's just living well without them and refusing to let them back in when they realize what they've lost. I'm living my best life now, surrounded by real family, the kind that actually loves and values me. And honestly, I wouldn't change a thing.